Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector and this is The Broken Meeple, a show where I talk about board games, so hopefully you clicked on the right video. This is a little mini-series, Rate My Shelf, where I go through my kayaks collection in random and just pick a shelf and talk about the games on there, why I like them, and whether they're worth keeping or whether these could be considered as culls in the future. Not to say that I will now get rid of them, but you know, it's kind of highlighting the ones that are constantly getting played in my collection or ones that I really love versus the ones where, you know, the plays are starting to drop or it's starting to suffer a little bit over time, and whether if I was to do a big cull, they could be considered for that. There's a lot of squares though, and I've only done about 5 or 6 of these episodes, I think, and it's been a while since I did the last one. So given that there's not a lot being released on reviews, I figured let's do another one. So this one is in the other room where I used to do the videos where I was standing up, and this one has quite a few big games on it. You know, certainly these two are big games. This one's no slouch. The smallest one is probably the one at the bottom, and even then there's quite a bit in it. So why don't we tackle that one first? So I'm just going to push that all the way over there, get it out of shot, and tackle Flamme Rouge. Now, Flamme Rouge is a bike racing game, and I've expanded this, I think, with all the expansions, and I'm not entirely sure why I've done it, because I like Flamme Rouge, but oh my god, I cannot remember the last time I played it and what's kind of happened. I mean, look at this. I've got Peloton in here. I've got Mateo in here. I might have played the Peloton one once. I'm not even sure if I've even touched the Mateo one. I think I might have just bought it for completeness sake. But, you know, this is a good game. Don't get me wrong. You know, it's a cycling game. You control 2 cyclists. You go up against the opponents. You have a small deck of cards with the various speeds of 2 different cyclists. And essentially, you go up and down hills. You do bends, avoid obstacles. But the idea is that you're trying to time the, like, what do they call it? The tailwind or the downforce, I forget what they call it, but you know, it's essentially where you're behind a cyclist and you can like use their slipstream. That's what it's called. Yeah,
it's powered by love.
So you're behind a cyclist, you don't have to put in as much effort as the one in front. And you're kind of going back and forth, trying to time that to such an extent that your cyclists do not get really exhausted by the end of the race. And of course, whoever wins the race wins. Now the problem is that I haven't played this in a while because A, I'd have to relearn a ton of the rules again, but B, also there's games like Downforce, and now we've got Heat, you know, and those ones are a little bit easier to pull out and less rules to go over. So I haven't really had the desire to bring this one out in a long time, but I want to try it more. I want to try the solo mode in it and, you know, try the solo mode and see if that rekindles it or bring it out at some point multiplayer, but it's been a while and I just haven't had time to put in that kind of effort. But it's a cool game, I mean, I like it. You know, you've got the modular tracks, you can build your own or use a proper one that's pre-designed. You've got the little tiny little plastic bikes, and some people have pimped theirs up to show really good stuff. There's no inserts, but the problem is that I don't even know what's what and what's expansion anymore. You know, this Mateo one, okay, it threw in weather tokens. Alright, so I don't even think I've played this one at all. I'm pretty certain I've not done anything with weather. And the Peloton, I think it added some, like, you could add 2 more cyclists and do more with the solo, but again, I've not even touched it. Dummy teams, and there's not even that many rules. I mean, this rulebook looks big. Most of it is just other languages. So it's really only this that I've got to read, and I can't remember the last time I ever did. What is it? It does put me off this. It's got to be the fact that these other racing games exist, and therefore they are the ones that are getting the limelight, whereas this one is starting to suffer. So as much as I enjoy the game, and I think it's a cool like racing game with a little bit more tactical play than others, it's still one that I'm going to put on the cull section, because if it's not getting the plays, then maybe it has had its time. But I do have a desire to get it out again, to play it again, and see if I could rekindle some of that original love for it. Because I do remember really liking this, bringing it out quite often. But as is the way, you can only have so many of a certain genre before you start like forgetting some of the other ones in the genre. And the same goes for racing, and we've had a bit of an influx of racing games in the last few years, and I haven't even played some of the others. You know, people are going on about that new Mad Max one, what's it called, Thunder Road Vendetta or something. I've seen it played, I've still not played it myself, but with that and Downforce and Heat and some of these other racers that have come out, you know, ones like this are just getting forgotten, and that is the nature of the beast, unfortunately. So it's a potential cull, but I would like to give it another chance, and hopefully it can redeem itself. But I don't know, we'll have to see.
Love harder! We can't, sir. The men have been hurt too often.
Alright, next up we're going to talk about Alien Frontiers. Now, this is kind of almost linking to the point I've just made about having too much of a particular genre. This is a dice worker placement game. Oh my word, have we not got sick and tired of that being used ad nauseum lately? Well, this is one of the older ones, and in my opinion, still one of the classics. I've had to print out a few sort of little reference aids for it, but I think I've even got the expansion. Yeah, I got the faction pack, so faction pack 1 and those, so you can have asymmetrical boards. That's really cool. But, you know, this had the storage solution where you had tuck boxes for all your pieces and stuff, which I really do think more games should do it. I made a big deal on my Leaf review where I talked about the tuck boxes that were used to store the stuff in there. I think tuck boxes are a great way to store components, and yet a lot of publishers just don't seem willing to do it. But seriously, we have to spend money on getting inserts with special compartments for player pieces and all that lot. And you go out of your way to, well, I say go out of your way, okay, you spend 2 minutes designing some rubbish little vacuum form insert that doesn't do anything. You know, don't get me started on that Robinson Crusoe malarkey. But, you know, for player pieces, all you need is a little tuck box like this. Just a nice little tuck box with the logo and a couple of colour banners to say yellow. And then I can just give this to the yellow player. Nice and simple, and it can't cost that much to make, but it just adds that little bit of extra quality to this game. And the game itself is a really good quality game. I mean, you essentially are trying to land on top of this planet, and you've got the different spaces around the edge of the board where you can put your dice, and depending on what die values they are, they'll do things. They'll get you resources, get you cards, and, you know, build little drones, build little like dome stations which put you on the planet itself. And then, as well as the dice worker placement, it kind of becomes a bit of an area control game where you can get bonuses and points depending on where you are on the planet.
And there just ain't room enough on this planet for the two of us.
It's a very simple game, and the expansion doesn't complicate it that much. But I like the little pieces you get in here. I mean, if I take out what's in this particular one here, so you've already got, you know, decent standard dice. I mean, big chunky dice of your colour. But then you get these little plastic domes. I really like these. You probably won't be able to see it much on the camera, but it's a little glass dome, a little plastic piece in it. Something that would kind of, you might have seen bigger versions of this in something like a Terraforming Mars Deluxe edition or kind of like that. But this is what you got standard in the game. I mean, yes, you could buy these ridiculous pieces and oversized rocket ships and that. They were all kind of a waste of money, really. Just the standard stuff you get in this box was more than sufficient. I mean, okay, the resources are a little bit boring with the wooden pieces, but you know what? I forget what they are. Ore and energy. I'm sure I could substitute that with something out of the Stonemar treasure chest or something. But it's just a cool, easy, you know, fairly tight game. And the problem is, though, is that when you've got a lot of these worker placement games, you forget about the old ones. And it's not that I'm cult of the new, because I would probably say I'm closer to cult of the old than I am cult of the new, frankly. But, you know, I don't get that hyped about a new game when I know that older ones exist. But because there's a lot of worker placement games in general, and I certainly have my favourites, it's a little bit harder for this one to hit the table. This also has one flaw in it, which lately my game tastes have kind of gone down this route where I really don't like this thing in the game, and that is game length for the sake of game length. This one takes a while to finish. It's not a complex game. It's a fairly simple game, but man, it takes as long as something that is a lot more complex. I mean, especially when you play this with 4 players, you could be playing this easily for a 2-hour limit, and it's like, this game doesn't warrant 2 hours, people. I mean, this is simple enough. It should have been a 60-minute affair, 90 at the absolute tops. But yeah, you put in the max number of players in this, and it really does take far too long. I'm glad that they didn't do the stupid thing of making a 5th player out of it, although, or did they? Did they do it with an expansion? I don't know if they did. I never touched it. But it kind of makes you only want to play this at 2 or 3. Even at 3, it can take a little bit of time, and that has put me off wanting to bring it out, because I know that as soon as I bring it out, it's going to fill up with the max players, and I'm going to be there for a long time, and it really does drag out if you're not careful. You really need like some kind of quick start rules, and I'm curious as to whether there have been any official or unofficial ones on the internet where, you know, you can do a quick start setup for 4 players, because that could actually be a good way to rekindle this. Now, is it a keep or a cull? And I mean, technically it should be a cull because it's one that I haven't played in ages, but man, I love the quality that this game does with the tuck boxes and the pieces and the smooth simplicity of it. I just wish it didn't take so long to play. And if I do sell it, there is no way I will find a copy of this ever again. I mean, this is so out of print. It comes back every now and again, and they usually mess up the reprint. So this is one of the better copies of the game that exists. And oh man, it's difficult, but I think I'm gonna have to say it's a potential cull because of just the fact that it's not getting played because of its length. But much like Flamme Rouge, part of me wants to bring it out again for a little bit of that nostalgia trip. But I really do need to have a see if there's any quick start rules, because I just don't have the incentive to want to play this at 4 players, and to have a game that is so restrictive on player count for me does hurt it. I mean, there are other games that have suffered as a result because of that. If a game is going to be with 4 players, it should be fun to play at 4 players, and this one just doesn't always end up that way.
Won't somebody please think of the children?
Next up, oh boy, let's go on to the big one here. Western Legends, and this isn't even everything I own for it. I have got the playmat for it, like the big expansion playmat for it, and this thing is jam-packed to the point that I don't even know how I store everything in here. I mean, I have got the standees, I have got fistful of extras, good, bad, and a handsome, or whatever it is, or these cards, these extra cards, those cards, these cards. I can't even remember what everything does anymore because I haven't played this copy in so long. The last couple of times I think I played this game were other people's copies, so trying to decipher what everything is in here is a bit of a nightmare. I thought, like, well, maybe I should get that new big box to store it. Well, I'm not paying 95, 75, whatever it is, pounds for a big box, people. Sod that. But even then, I've heard that the big box has one of the worst inserts that I've ever made. So you want me to pay £75 for a box? A box with a useless insert. Do I need to, talk about my Wingspan nesting box video rant that I did, where I talk about expensive big boxes that aren't necessary? The same kind of deal happens with this. But I really could do with organising this in a better fashion. And some people have actually given me some tips over time with this, because I've mentioned this in the past, and some have said, oh, but this is how I store everything, and I do it like this. And, one little tip they mentioned, which I might try, is that they actually put some of these cards in the slots for the stands themselves. Not a bad idea, I might have to look into that. But yeah, I need to sit down with this game, reread the rules, get it out for a play, because some people have shown interest in this, and really learn how to get it all out in a quicker way. Unfortunately, there's no quick setup for this game, which is a problem, because these big games really do deserve a big setup. Sorry, a quick setup. But unfortunately, when a game does take forever to set up, it does put me off wanting to play it. But reason I'm going to say that this is actually a keeper rather than a cull is because this game is just so much fun when I do play it. I mean, this is the Wild West theme in a box, and it's not even normally my favorite theme. I don't tend to watch Wild West movies, it's not something I really go for, but it's iconic, it's distinct, and when you play this game with it, you get into that mood. I mean, you are rustling cattle, you are prospecting gold, you're doing train heists, you're doing poker games. I mean, I love the fact that the cards that you use for the actions are also poker cards, and that's just a really cool thing. I love using the card system in this, but I actually tend to like playing the gambler in this game, so I like to try and go off to the poker players and try and do the pokers and get my points that way.
So you win without a fight.
Without shooting? You can't do that! Hey, you can't do that!
You could be a lawman, you could be a highwayman, you could switch from the one to the other, which is kind of weird thematically, the fact that you could be a highwayman and all of a sudden you're now the sheriff. It's kind of weird, but it's kind of the way things go. But you can kind of approach this game however you like. It is a sandbox at the end of the day, and for that reason, I give this one props for being really enjoyable. I just need a quicker way to set it up. I need to get a rules relearn of this, bring it out, and just find a way that I can get this out quicker. I mean, I know it's never going to be super fast. It's a massive box with 2, 3, 4, 5 mini expansions in this thing. Everything that has been released to date is in this box or in the cupboard with the playmat. But yeah, I do need to find a way to get this onto the table a little bit quicker and a little bit easier, because I don't really want to get rid of it, because I do enjoy it quite a bit.
But if your hand touches metal, I swear by my pretty floor bonnet, I will end you.
And last but not least, because I'm conscious of the camera battery, right, this is going to annoy a few people. Nations. In fact, conveniently, this is the Lotto Pellet shelf, because I got Flamme Rouge down there earlier. Now, Nations, well, it's hard to sort of gauge this. For a long time, and this will annoy some people, I have said that this is the better version of Through the Ages. Yes, I know that's annoyed a bunch of you out there, but deal with it. You know, there is kind of reason for my thing, and you're probably going to get your redemption soon. Nations is a great game. It is essentially what I wanted a multiplayer Through the Ages to be. You know, the artwork is pretty dismal. I'm sorry, the artwork is horrendous. And if you're gonna take the time to print out a second edition of Eclipse, you know, terrible games like that. Oh yeah, I said it. Eclipse is a terrible game. But you know, if you're gonna make the time to do a second edition of that, can we not do a second edition of Nations with like really nice artwork or something, better components? That would be so good. But I really like this game because it's got that same card selection mechanic that Through the Ages have, where you can, you know, tailor your civilization how you like. But I like the fact in here that war isn't the main thing that wins you the game. In Through the Ages, if you don't do well on the war front, if you don't get enough defense, you're just going to get trampled on by the opponent and you will lose flat out. Here, you have ways of getting around the fact that you don't have a lot of war. You can just have your stability so high that you don't care about wars when they happen. Or you can just mitigate it with other things. You know, if I'm not having to get military troops, I'm doing well on other stuff. So there is a way to get around the war aspect. But here, you've also got the asymmetric factions. So, you know, this is from the expansion Dynasties, which introduces a couple of cool rules. But with Dynasties, they added a bunch of extra boards. So you've already got 5 from the original, like China and Italy, Rome, that sort of thing. But now I can play Korea, Venice, Vikings, Ethiopia, who was that one? Japan. There's China, there's Persia, Egypt, there's Egypt. All right, some of these are the starter ones. So that's all Greece, that's all Rome. Right, here we go. America, Arabs, India, Mali, Portugal, and Mongolia. I mean, all of these have got very different setups, and I love that in civilization games. I want to play my own civ and have my own kind of tweak. So the Dynasties expansion really elevates this. But Through the Ages takes forever when you have multiple players. Oh my word, I hate playing Through the Ages in person. But the app for Through the Ages is fantastic. It's one of the best, if not the best app that exists for a board game. And I have been on plenty of plane journeys to Iceland and back, or, you know, to Ireland and back, where I have basically just gone, right, I'm going to play a couple of games of Through the Ages. Oh, we're landing. Oh, sweet. And because it takes me a good 60 to 90 minutes to get through a game, you know, I can play a couple of games of Through the Ages and my plane journey's already done. You know, it's really good as a time sink. But on the app, it's quicker. You can play against multiple players and, you know, it goes a lot quicker. It's hard. Oh my word, is the difficulty on that app hard. I tend to want to play on the easier difficulties for that reason, but it's still great fun because Through the Ages is still a fantastic Civ game. But 2 players can still take you 3 to 4 hours. 3 and 4 player, oh my word, I want to kill myself. It really is too much. This game, though, can be done and dusted in 3 hours with 4 players. So you can play the maximum number of players in this game and still get it done in the same amount of time as a typical heavy Euro, which means that I bring this one out more often in physical form. Well, an app doesn't exist for this one. It would be nice if one did, but this one is one that gets brought out. And there's a couple of other little tweaks that I do like. I mean, the wonders are a bit more interesting in this one. The cards have got a decent amount of variety. But I like the fact that you use workers on the cards, a bit like how you do in Through the Ages, but they produce a lot of different things. You know, Through the Ages buildings are fairly similar to each other. This one, they're certainly a lot more different. It's just a really cool game, and for me, it's a keeper, because I do enjoy bringing this one out from time to time, and it's just easier to get to the table than something like Through the Ages. But, you know, I would play Through the Ages more, because of the 4th edition, if it was just quicker to get to the table. But the app they kind of did a weird thing where the app managed to kill its own game, which was kind of weird. But, you know, that's to be said. I like Through the Ages on the app. Fantastic game on the app. For Nations, I would rather, well, for the physical version, I would rather play Nations. It's just kind of the way it is for me.
We're not so different, you and I.
So there you go, 4 games that I've talked about in my collection, 2 keepers, 2 potential culls, but you know, I would still like to get those played, and even the keepers still require a little bit of maintenance and a little bit of tweakery to get sorted. You know, this is just the way, you know, games can come out and replace older games, or, you know, when you've got too much of a good thing, some will get left behind because you haven't got enough time to play them, and I'm certainly getting to this point where I want games to be easier to set up and quicker to play. You know, they don't necessarily have to be all light games, but I can set up Ark Nova really quickly, and I can get through a game relatively quickly, you know, with less than 4 players, but, you know, with people who know what they're doing. And so Ark Nova kind of feels like comfort food to me. But, you know, there are some of these big grandiose games that just take an eternity to set up, have a ton of rules, and are much more of a chore to now get back to the table. I mean, see my Voidfall video where I talk about that kind of concept in more detail. But, you know, these games are still really good fun, and as you can see, they all are fairly oldish games. I mean, Flamme Rouge, Nations, Alien Frontiers, all of those are fairly oldish games. Western Legends is probably the most recent, even that's been out for a fair few years, so it's not all about cult of the new. Some of the older games are still fun, it's just a case of how you do it. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube and let me know your comments about these games. Do you like them, do you love them, or do you hate them? I'd be interested to know your thoughts. Until next time, remember as always, regardless of whether you're going to kill me for liking Nations more than Through the Ages, it's still only a game. So bye for now.